My guest today is Chris DeRusha, the Federal Chief Information Security Officer and the Deputy National Cyber Director for Federal. Chris, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for taking the time.
Hi, Jason. Yeah, great to be here.
As part of our Zero Trust Exchange, you are kicking us off today. So let's get started. It's been over a year now since President Biden signed the executive order around cybersecurity. Let's just jump in and discuss the progress government-wide. From your perspective, what are you seeing among agencies? What kind of progress are agencies making around that cybersecurity executive order?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. We've done quite a bit. It is amazing that it's just been a little over a year since the president released the EO. And we took on a lot of root cause issues with that EO, and we took on a number of things that we could make immediate progress on. So it's great that we've issued almost 4 or 5 OMB directives and policies, some of them very big, with the Zero Trust strategy, with a lot of follow-on actions. And so, the EO has really kind of culminated into our policy direction, which will last, over the next couple of years. And so that's exciting to have all that strategic framework in place and really start implementing. We've also made great strides in areas that have continued to plague federal government, key capability areas like getting strong multi-factor authentication in place everywhere. And also ensuring that all of the data federal agencies are charged with protecting is encrypted in transit and at rest. And those are big lifts. Those are big investments that need to be made. But while there's still challenges there, we've made a ton of progress because we put such a spotlight on it and made it a priority for federal agencies. So we're excited for everything that's coming down the pike from all of this framework.
You mentioned the Zero Trust strategy. We'll go there in a second. There's plenty to talk to there. But before we go to Zero Trust, let me ask you about some of those big lifts, those big investments. One of the things that is always challenging when it comes to cybersecurity is there enough money? Is there enough resources? Is there enough time? All those pieces and parts, because the need is now, yet there's always a long tail to it. How are you finding agencies are balancing all those different needs? Because as you said, like getting MFA in place, data in transit and data at rest will take some time. How are they kind of taking important steps forward?
Yeah, there are the barriers that have been there before are still there, and I think some of them can be organizational and cultural barriers with senior leadership focus and direction. You can make progress in those quickly. Some of them may require new procurements or system modernizations, and those you can also ensure being prioritized and built into budget cycles, but may take a little longer to implement. And so in those cases, we're ensuring that agencies have sufficient compensating control measures in place. I think that's one way of answering that. But look, it's still the case that agencies need more skilled personnel. They need more hours in the day. Funding gets a lot of attention. We agree. We've been saying that since the year and a half I've been here, that we really need to put a premium on investing more in this space. But that's not the only thing. We also need to ensure that procurement systems are moving fast and that we're staying focused on hiring and get removing those barriers to get the talent in. So it's really everything. And I think the key here is that the White House is remaining laser focused on this issue and keeping it on the top of the priority stack for all the agencies. I think that's the big thing that is different and that will make us successful.
And I think that's the other piece of it that you bring up at the end. Keep it on top of the priority stack. Cyber's always been a high priority. I can probably tag back to 2006 timeframe when the tapes, if you remember, the backup tapes were lost, and that was VA and 21 million or 26 million veterans records were lost from backup tapes. I think that was the time we all kind of had that moment of, oh, we better do more about cybersecurity, even though that type of breach was not a true breach like we think about today. So when you talk about keeping it on stack, what are your conversations like with agencies these days? Each agency is different. We get that. They're all at different places in their journey towards zero trust, towards better cybersecurity. But when the Chief Information Security Officers Council meets, when you go to the CIO Council, when you individually meet with agencies, can you just give me a sense of what are some of those conversations like? What are some of the things that come to your attention, and what do you say back?
Yeah, so myself and Director Inglis and Ferruccio Martirana, Deputy National Security Advisor Newberger, we all have conversations at various levels, and they're consistently themed, right? So we talked to deputy secretaries about managing digital risk across their entire environments, and ensuring that they've got governance in place for that they're have good scorecarding and metricing for measuring performance on priorities for the administration, and exercising. That's been a big one over the past 6 months with the geopolitical conflicts we've had, and ensuring that we're all prepared for an eventuality that could occur there. All of that comes together as the agency level risk management role, because the deputies sit over procurement and finance and on hiring and the CIO and CISO, right? And so having that leadership direction focus is crucial, and we've been focusing a lot on that as a result. And then all of that funnels down to the CIO council, CISO council. We're just reinforcing all these same messages, but it's at more of the implementation layer of how we're going to help each other work through some of these challenges and barriers. And one of the things I'm really excited about, Jason, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but we're going to do a lot of this in a very structured way around the zero trust implementation plans, because they're big, they're across multiple capability areas that all need to move forward, and there's specific actions that we can metric and track progress on, and then share lessons with each other as we benchmark how agencies are doing, and really it's the same actions they're trying to take, so we can do that. And we've set up a process behind it to really make that the thing that we focus around, and really see if we're making progress around, and identify where the remaining gaps are too, if we need new policy or funding.
Well, you brought up zero trust. We are in the zero trust exchange, so let's jump right into there. You talked about a very structured way, but at the same time, your strategy was very clear to say everyone will move in different phases and different kind of speed toward a zero trust architecture. We want you to hit certain deadlines and get to certain goals in certain timelines, but we know everyone's go different. So when you talk about this in a structured way, maybe dig down into that a little bit. What do you mean? Give me a sense, maybe even give me an example.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do we do with OMB M2209, the zero trust strategy? We did a few things. The first thing that we did that's very important is we defined what zero trust means for federal government. And zero trust is used as a term by a lot of people, and it means a lot of things to different folks. So we now have an answer to that. So if you ask me what it means, I can point you to that document. What we did is we said, all right, there's a few things we need to do from the readiness perspective to get to this first layer of capability maturity in all zero trust pillars. And we leveraged a maturity model that CISA's developed in coordination with NSA and others, and NIST, of course. It kind of built off of all of that and said, these are the areas that all of these ships need to be lifted at the same time, or you're not doing it right, and you're not going to get the outcomes you're looking for. And we said, if we can get to this first layer of maturity, we really believe that we're going to reduce the amount of successful attacks and incidents at agencies just by a huge amount. And that's from conversations with NSA and other big corporations that have kind of come over the horizon on zero trust maturity. Just their experience was that. So we tried to emulate what worked for them by putting that into clear policy direction that gave specific starting points and actions throughout. And then to your point, Jason, we built in some flexibility where certain things we felt like a year would be sufficient for everybody and a good target to meet a certain action. For others, we said, hey, we don't know where you are in your procurement cycle and all of these things. You've got 25, 30 things to do. We don't want to come in and have you stop something that took you a year to get to the point where you're about to roll out a tool, right? Like, oh my gosh, no one wanted that. And so we wanted to build in some flexibility by asking for specific tailored implementation plans from each agency, which we now have. And what we're doing is just going through them with agencies and the budget officer early in the FY24 budget cycle to make sure that everybody understands these investments and that they're right and that they're achievable. And so we're pressure testing that. And that's kind of new, right? We haven't really had a strategic framework mapped down to specific technical investments where we've had enough time to really deliberate with each other and ensure that we're getting it right and pressure test that with one another. I am excited about that because even if some of the plans are showing us there's some serious gaps in agencies, even in understanding where they should go, that's okay. I mean, that was true yesterday. And what we can now do with that information is make it different tomorrow.
I think it's really important about this budget cycle piece because, again, as you said, resources budget are important. It's not the end all be all. You mentioned procurement, you mentioned people, you mentioned partnership with industry, of course. But the budget piece, everyone says, well, you know, we already spend, what is it, 11, $12 billion on cybersecurity. I think it's maybe even more now. And how much more can you spend? So when you look through the budgets and when you start saying your priority is pick something, right? Data encryption, let's say, in transit, where's the investment? Is it the right investment? How much are you asking for? Those are the types of questions you're asking, or is it even the next level down?
No, yeah, it's even the next level down where in a lot of cases we're talking about specific investments. And one place where we've got an early start were the zero trust investments that we made as part of the Technology Modernization Fund, because there we have quarterly check-ins with those agencies, and we're getting to know the PMs that they're hiring and getting to really kind of pressure test the specific investments. Where are they at in their procurement cycle? Challenges are they facing? It's really helpful because every agency is going to have the same supply chain disruption problem on a certain type of software or hardware, right? And so, like knowing that is really helpful, because then it allows us to make better policy and oversight governance decisions across the board.
Appreciate you bringing up the TMF. I know just in the last couple of weeks, the TMF board made another award for zero trust to USDA. Is there anything? It's still early on. I get that with OPM, with education and some others. Are you starting to see any movement around that? I understand. I talked with one TMF recipient who got awarded in September, and they still hadn't received their money yet. So I know that there's some frustration with kind of the process. But I don't know if that's true for the other agencies. Are you starting to see some of the movement on TMF and zero trust?
Yeah, for the three initial awardees, there was one that was a little bit slower than I think anyone would have liked. But it's also in part everybody learning to sort of do that sometimes for the first time when you do an initial investment, particularly with the change we made on the repayment. But the other two got it, I'd say, much quicker and have really started moving down the pike. And we know from our interactions with them on the board that they're making meaningful progress in implementing these tools. And again, it's everything from people are building out endpoint detection response capabilities, where they're building out SOC maturity through SOAR tools. You're getting better visibility with SASE tools. But and then sometimes it's just core hiring out a PM office and getting a tier 3 technical support, staff augmentation, skills that the agencies historically had trouble hiring and retaining. And so they're just going to take an approach of getting in a contract that can help them through the implementations that they need to do. And so, it's some meat and potatoes, but it's all across the board, but we're seeing things move. And also inside agencies, I know there's been a big focus on, no new funding or some of the things I've heard. And I'm not sure I fully agree. I mean, in FY22, agencies were able to reprioritize some funding, and also the SolarWinds reserve money that we set aside bolstered at least those 9 agencies' cybersecurity opportunities in 22, and those are aligned completely with zero trust implementation plans and EO priorities. In 23, we were building the strategy as we were doing the 23 budget cycle, and so all of the agencies' cyber submissions are aligned completely with the zero trust strategy. We did data calls around the zero trust strategy and capabilities and said, these are the ones you need to prioritize. Like, all that happened. And so now in 24, I think we have the best opportunity, now that we have implementation plans, to just get even more granular and successful. But I'll be honest with you, just matching the way the federal procurement cycle works, I feel pretty good about what we were able to do there. I don't think there's a magic wand. Unfortunately, we'd all love one, where we say, we need this now, and then the funding is there the next month. I just think that we're working with the constraints we have, and we'll be pretty successful.
How are you leaning on other programs such as the continuous diagnostics and mitigation program as a prime example to address some of these challenges or opportunities within zero trust? We know, as an example, through CDM, the who's on your network, what's on your network, answering those questions that they've been answering for the last decade is really the foundational pieces to zero trust. Is a CDM kind of accelerating, or are you looking at CDM as an accelerator toward the zero trust any more than you did 6 months ago and a year ago, 5 years ago? I'm just trying to weigh if there's more expectation, if you will.
Well, I think there's always been very high expectations in the CDM program. As I'm sure we've discussed before, I was at Homeland Security, what is now CISA, in that agency around the creation moment of CDM. And 11 years on, the goals we had then are still just as relevant now. I describe more of what we did with the zero trust strategy as building off of those capability goals. And so my answer is the CDM program is crucial, will continue to be, needs to always continue to adapt and evolve. And I think what we want to see is it's the vehicle, and if we need to make changes to it, we will, and how it operates. But the vision's right, and the general model's right. And in implementation, you can make changes to be more efficient as you learn from the past, and that's something we should always do. But that, beyond that, we should really be building in stuff that we want to do in zero trust now and in the next iteration into that CDM program. And even things like we could get creative around having staff augmentation come through that, because we have a lot of these key prime vendors already in the system, and they offer more than we've asked sometimes. You can ask them to do new things. That's, I'm not going to give specifics there, but that just is one example of a conversation that we want to have.
You make that great point, because a lot of the contracts under CDM for the Group F, Group E, Group B, whatever, are there, and it's not like you have to go through the procurement process, which is the same issue with TMF, where you already have a project in place, and this is accelerating that project versus a new start. And I think both of those are really important to making to accelerating the progress of zero trust and cybersecurity more broadly. Chris, I want to broaden this out just maybe a little bit as we continue to talk about zero trust. When you look through the strategy, there's something like 19 actions that agencies had to get done. Those implementation plans are due back in March. Are you able to maybe offer at a high level some of the trends you were seeing, some of the things that when you looked through those implementation plans, here's some of the things that really stood out to you?
Yeah, for sure. Again, one of the things that we saw is people are really starting to put process in place around this to organize themselves, which I think is crucial. You need a clear, strong lead in the agency to really start to kind of make progress in implementing, that many tasks across at times big federated agencies. So we've certainly seen that, but agencies have broken ground on a number of initiatives. Enterprise identity is a big one that we've seen, and that makes sense, and that's also where we like to reinforce it's the core starting point. And so wherever possible, we want to see the most investments around that, and generally I think we are. Network architecture, when you get into doing segmentation in a new way, that's challenging. Even big corporations who've been doing it for a while face challenges really kind of implementing that. Data security is another one where we see folks kind of moving into, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done there to really get into using modern tools to manage data. You can have discovery tools which sort of are capable of auto labeling, but they're not always fully accurate, and you have to tune all of that. And then when you learn things about where your data is, and you've got to make adjustments. And so those are big, very healthy transformations, but they'll take some time. And that's relatively new technology in the field that needs to be integrated across the full culture, all the way sometimes down to touching the end user and how they work with documents differently and or transmit them in email, for example, right? So, I mean, I've implemented these capabilities in the past, and they're culture changes. So, but we're excited to see that agencies are taking these things on in their plans because they do need to plan for them. And like another one around that last point that I was making, that we've stood up this working group, which we're excited about, of CISOs and chief data officers. And there's a task in there for agencies to go look at their data classification schemes. But what we really are after there is not, great, we want to see 100 different data classification schemas. It's not the goal. The goal is to point out that they're too different, and that to have a good systematized way of doing this and give sort of sanity to the workforce, we may need to make some adjustments there, and we can have some best practice way of doing that together, developing those frameworks with the insights of both communities feeding into that. Because when you get into implementation, you can't just be a CISO and implement something like this. It just impacts the organization too broadly. So I'm excited, Jason, for some of those developments that we're starting to see.
Let's talk a little bit more about that CISO, Chief Data Officer working group. Is it 10 people? Is it 80 people? And is it 50% CISOs, 50% CDOs, and then are they meeting weekly, monthly? And just give me a little bit more about them.
Yeah, so right now it's still in its like fairly formation stage, I guess I'd describe. So we identified leadership. They have started meeting. We've had several volunteers, both from the CDO and CISO council side. I'd put on the order of probably currently more around like 10 people. I've never seen a functional working group at 80. So I'd probably push back if I saw it getting out that far. Because what we really want is just a few folks who have the time to really invest in doing this. And then what we'll do to ensure we get the broader perspective once you have that smaller tiger team is what we always do is just push it out for awareness to broader cross sections of the CISO council, CDO council, CIO council, making sure everybody gets a shot at something new. That's crucial for us. We can't do anything without the buy-in from all its communities.
I appreciate that. I know it's still early on, so there's probably more to follow up with you on that as it kind of develops over the next 6 or 9 months. Chris, I don't want to let you go because I know we're almost done here. But before I let you go, I got to talk a little bit about what should we look out for later this summer, early in the fall, rest of the calendar year. What kind of progress do you hope agencies make between now and January 1? Give me a sense of what your expectations are from where you sit at OMB in the White House.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. I mean, we're completing the tasks in the EO, and one big one that is coming soon comes from Section 4K, which is about OMB issuing guidance to agencies on following NIST's Secure Software Development Framework, and that's one we've got a lot of interest on. We've got a ton of feedback on that, and I'm glad we did because it's a hard thing to do. It's a new framework, it's a new model, and I think that our policy guidance is going to be successful in building out the right rollout plan to ensure it's not just a compliance framework, but it is something that is incenting vendors to really follow these practices and build secure development practices into their fabric of their organizations. That is the goal. So we want to really just make sure we're reinforcing that. And I think that we're carving it well and giving ourselves some time to build out the full plan. And so can't give much more than that, Jason, but that is a big thing that's coming. I've put it into the formal clearance process here, which means for the most part, everyone is generally aligned, and now we'll work on the edges to get it released. Another one that I've been a part of, coming soon to, is the Cyber Safety Review Board efforts. And those have really been targeted mostly at the Log4j issues, Log4Shell vulnerability. And it's an exciting thing to be a part of, and looking forward to the release of that to the president in the coming months. Is another exciting thing that's going to come out. And then also the Federal Acquisition Council releasing draft rules, so we can have the conversation that we need to have with industry on our proposal for new contract clauses. And that, that's a meat and potatoes thing, but as we all know, it is a real barrier and has been to information sharing during events or in steady state. and also incenting certain types of behaviors. And we really feel strongly that we need to move forward there, but it's going to be a conversation, and we want to do it the right way. So excited for those things that are coming down the pike.
You got in front of me because you knew I was going to ask about the software framework, and you answered the question. I can't really tell you much more about that. And I'm glad to hear that the Federal Acquisition Security Council is making progress. It's been kind of quiet over the last couple months, so looking forward to that. In the last minute, Chris, so you get the last word here before I let you go. What's the message to industry about the Zero Trust effort? A lot of industry is very excited about it, but what's your message to them? What do you want to make sure they understand?
Yeah. So first, thank you, because we built that together with our industry colleagues. We got 130 public comment submissions, independent submissions, which is a lot for a federal document. And we really made that strategy better because of it. Now it's really about helping agencies in implementation. And I know that there's a desire to really sort of market each tool as Zero Trust. I think we also want to be cautious around not overselling what each tool can do. All of these tools are crucial components of the Zero Trust strategy in achieving Zero Trust principles. We all agree to that. But I do find sometimes the agencies are getting a little bit confused when they're told that this tool is going to complete Zero Trust for them. I think that's something that I would just ask our industry colleagues to really think carefully about as they're having those conversations, and ensure that, while the innovation that's coming out of industry is the thing that's going to get us there, to make the tech easier to use and to automate things and actually get security to the place we need it to be, we also want to do that responsibly together. And so I think just making sure that you really understand agencies' needs and are working to help them be successful and really make that tech work is my main ask for industry. But the partnership's been fantastic. We really look forward to continuing it.
All right, Chris, we could talk a lot longer. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So let me thank my guest. Chris DeRusha is the Federal Chief Information Security Officer and the Deputy National Cyber Director for Federal. Chris, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, likewise, Jason. Thank you very much.
I'm Jason Miller. Now let's send you back to the studio for more from the Zero Trust Cyber Exchange.